All right, welcome everyone to week 12 of Computers in the Studio. I hope you all are doing well. Please be sure to watch week 11 before moving on to this video. Today we will be talking about text animations, and so this video will primarily just be very quickly looking at text preset animations. And so what I want you to do is after you open up After Effects and create a new untitled project, click on New Composition. And from this, we're going to call this text animation. And you're going to just leave all the settings the same. Make sure it's always HD TV 1080 29.97 or 30 frames per second. I'm going to hit OK. And then from this, I'm going to hit Command T. You can also just go up here and click on the text to then type out any sort of text that you would want to. I'm just going to type out text for the sake of being simplistic, but it can really be anything that you want it to. And so as stated beforehand, text, at least in its initial manipulation options, is very similar to Photoshop. If you go over here, you'll see that you can update the font size, you can change the leading, you can change the tracking, you can change the stroke width and make it thicker or thinner. You can change how the stroke is overlaid on top of the fill. You can stretch both vertically and also horizontally. And you can move it up off the baseline, as well as certain other options for certain figures, for sume figures. You can do what's called a faux bold, italics, all caps, small caps, superscripts, and subscripts. You can also do ligatures. There's no ligature in this one, so it doesn't really apply. But so you're going to take your text and you can center it, leave it wherever it is you want it to be. Remember that you can also have the text written on the path. That was covered in a previous video. That is one way to manipulate it. The other way that I'm going to show you right now is through presets. And so you're going to go down to your window and you're going to hit Effects and Presets. It's also Command 5 on a Mac. And what you'll see is that in your top right window, it'll open up this Effects and Presets option. And so I already had mine open, but what you'll see is something more similar to this, and you'll want to go to Animation Presets along the very, very top. Now from this, you'll then see a drop down of lots of different other effects that you can use, but we're specifically going to explore this through the lens of text-based transformations. And so when I click on text, you'll then see that a lot of different options show up. This is like an insane amount of just different presets that you can use. And you can either preview them by actually dropping them onto your text. So I'm going to take, for example, this central spiral. I'm going to double click and you'll see that my text has kind of disappeared. And part of that is because now if I hit space, you'll see that the effect animation preset has been applied. So you can go through those and preview them in that way. The other way is by clicking on this hamburger bar right here, and then from that go to Browse Presets. This will pull up Adobe Bridge, so please be sure to have that, have Adobe Bridge installed. If I then click on text, you'll see that all of the folders of the effects and presets of text is now applied, or is now open in this Bridge. And from that, if I then now click, say, 3D text, you'll see that I'm kind of getting a preview of what these different animations look like. And then from that, if I click on this, you'll see that in my preview window, there'll be a small sort of viewfinder that then shows how these effects play out. Okay? So going back to this, what you should see now is if you go down to your timeline and you can go to your text, and then if you click on the text sublayer, you'll see that your effects are here. They won't be in your effects control, so if I go to effects control, you'll see that nothing is here. They'll be directly under the text layer within the within the layer panel. And so from this, I can then open, and you'll see that there are now other ways to edit and manipulate these specific effects. And the one we're going to look at very quickly is Range Selector. And so Range Selector is extremely powerful, and the reason for that is because it allows you to select and choose how much of the text you want to animate. So I'll give you an example. You'll see that there are two different values here. There's a start and then an end value, and one is set to 0 and the other is set to 100. So if I set this to 50 and then hit play, you'll now see what happens is that only about half of the text is actually going through with the animation, right? And I'm going to quickly shorten this to maybe about 4. Oh, I'm going to shorten this really quickly down to about 4 seconds. That way we don't have all this dead time. And I'm also going to slide in my viewer so it's just to these 4 seconds. And so as you're seeing, or as I stated, it's only affecting about half the text. And this is extremely, extremely cool and extremely versatile. But as you also see, there is the stopwatch, which also now allows us to change this value over time through keyframes. So I can choose the end is 0, hit start on this keyframe, and then maybe go all the way to slightly before it's supposed to finish, and then change this to 100. And so now what you'll see is, if I hit play, it starts to just play. It starts to, as the animation goes on, more and more of the text actually starts to be affected by the animation. And then from this, you can then also play with this fade in. So you'll see that the opacity is set to 0 at the beginning, right? And then maybe like over time, it starts to fade in. But let's say I don't want it to start. I don't want to be able to see the text until the animation starts. So then at this point, I can set this to 0. And you'll see that now my text is not showing up until it starts part of the animation. Okay, so this is it for this initial video. Please be sure to view on Canvas with the exercises, and we'll be back in the next video speaking a little more about how you can animate text. This Computers in the Studio, week 12. Thank you all so much. Stay healthy.